All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we're going to be talking about tracking our cars. And I want to give a big thank you to all of you that have been supporting my track day videos I've posted in the past. I know it's not the most popular content, especially on our platform. Most people care about, drag racing and street racing and stuff like that. But this is something that I'm really passionate about, and I was really excited to get this car to help me get back on track and share some of this with you guys. And the good news is a lot of you have reached out to me and told me that you're interested as well. Maybe you're getting ready to take your car to your first track day and you just want a little bit more information on how to make sure it goes well. So I wanted to make this video to share with you guys how I prepared for the track, what kind of costs you should be expecting, as well as things like, mods you can do to help make your car faster once you start getting more seat time. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that in this video, and hopefully you guys find it useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. Now, as we go through this, you're probably going to notice a common theme being that I recommend taking your car to the track as stock as possible before you do any modifications. There are a couple things that you'll want to do just to get through the weekend, but generally speaking, I'm not going to tell you to fully build your car just to take it to its first track day. Start with it as close to stock as possible. Figure out what you like about it, what you want to improve, and take a very methodical approach to how you modify your car. And that way you know that every single thing you change is making an improvement, and you also can feel the benefits and understand the difference in how your car is handling. So I took my car completely stock last year, gone to a couple track days since then as I've continued to modify and upgrade the car. And this is kind of my overall opinion on how things will go. So starting off, let's just talk about cost. The track day itself is definitely expensive, but to get started, I recommend going to motorsportsreg.com. This is a website that lists all the track days across the entire country so that you can identify any days that you might want to join in on. So you can put in your zip code, set a certain mile radius, and it'll look for all the tracks that are close to you, as well as list all of the events and who's hosting them over, the rest of the year. And thankfully, we're in the midst of the season right now. Pretty much every weekend, something is going on. So there are a lot of opportunities to join a track day. Now, I always do HPDEs, so that's an acronym for high performance driving event. But there are a lot of other options as well. I like HPDs because they're laid back. You have a good opportunity to get instruction and learn the track and things like that. But you can do time trials. You can do, a lot of really competitive things. They even list like car shows and stuff like that on there. So anything that you might be interested in joining or participating in at a local track to you, you can find on that website. So definitely check it out. Open up your radius a little bit. I usually drive like 150 to 250 miles to the tracks that are closest to me. So it's not necessarily going to be in your backyard, but taking a 2 or 3 hour trip to the track can definitely be worth it, especially for a really high quality road course. Now, as far as cost, it's definitely more expensive than it used to be. Most track days are around $500 to $600. The track days that I've been going to are around $550, so right in the middle of that range. But it depends a lot on the group. It depends on how much track time you're going to get. It depends on the track itself. Some tracks are just more expensive than others, so it really just depends. And like I said, if you browse through that website, you'll see all the different pricing and options. Some people list their track days on there, but you purchase it on their actual website. But, just kind of dig through it and you'll find what the price range is and one that's in your budget. Also keep in mind that's for the entire weekend. I usually go for Saturday and Sunday. That's what I recommend for somebody that's learning their car, because Saturday you'll usually get an instructor that teaches you how to drive the track, how to drive your car. And then on Sunday, you get to kind of use what you've learned to explore the handling capabilities of your car. But if you only want to do one day, you definitely can do that. That'll make it cheaper as well. You can just do Saturday or Sunday, and usually it's about 60% of the cost. So keep that in mind. Now, the next thing you need is lodging, and there are a lot of options here as well. You can do an Airbnb or a lot of different things. I usually just stay at a hotel. Hotels are typically $100 to $150 a night, again, depending on the area and the quality of the hotel you go to. At my last track day, with everything all in, it was around $350, with taxes and all of that stuff. But if you've got a buddy, maybe you guys can go to a cheaper hotel, split a room, get like a 2-bedroom hotel or something like that. And you can definitely cut back on that cost significantly. I've done that in the past just to save money. Next, you need safety equipment. And the main one every track day requires is a helmet. Helmets come in a lot of different styles and a lot of different prices. My helmet's around $300. It's definitely a very low end entry level helmet. You can get even cheaper than that as well. I've seen open face helmets for as cheap as $200, or you can even spend over $1,000 on a helmet and it'll be carbon fiber and have all the different options and stuff on it. Now, I will say I've learned over time the more expensive helmets definitely are nicer. It's not just because it's carbon fiber, but because they're using higher quality materials, they can make the helmets thinner and they can make it lighter. So my helmet is very bulky, it's very heavy. You've seen maybe some of my videos where I show like I can hit my head on my headliner sometimes, and if the seating position isn't right. So, definitely just keep that in mind. If you spend more money, you definitely get what you pay for. It will be a higher quality, more comfortable, just better fitting helmet overall. But I'm fine with my cheap one. It was in my budget at the time. Make sure that it is certified. Make sure that it isn't going to expire in like 1 or 2 years so you can get, a good value out of it. And that should be good to go. Now, one last thing I'll talk about is fuel. You definitely need to expect to spend a lot of money on fuel. I usually end up going through 2 tanks of fuel a day. So about 4 tanks of fuel over a weekend. Depending on the cost of fuel where you are, it can be about $200. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're pushing it on track. The gas light will come on early, and some people say, oh, well, I've still got a 1/4 tank of fuel, but you don't want to run into fuel starvation issues while you're on track. So I try not even to let it go below half a tank if at all possible, but if it gets to a 1/4 tank, I'm definitely pulling off track and filling up. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're probably going to get about 60 gallons of fuel over the weekend. And it's going to be even worse if you use E85. So maybe that gives you guys a little more insight on why I use pump gas instead of ethanol, because I don't want to have to fill up my tank after every single session. So yeah, again, something to consider. Now, that's the cost of the actual track day and just getting through the event. Let's talk about some service and things that you need to do to your car to prepare for the track day. One big one is a track inspection. Pretty much every track day that I've gone to requires one. Now, some allow you to do it yourself and you can just kind of self-certify your car that it's ready, but others require you go to a shop. And I recommend, even if you're allowed to do it yourself, just take it to a shop, especially a shop that's known for like preparing track cars and race cars. They'll go through everything, make sure your bushings are good, your bearings are good, there are no oil leaks, coolant leaks, things like that. Basically, just make sure that your car can make it through the weekend. They're not going to tell you, that it's going to be faster or like give you kind of any gauge on that. It's just to make sure that your car is safe so that you're not creating a hazard for other people at the track day. Now, when I took my car to its first inspection, I knew it was good, but they found issues. They actually found an oil leak. And fortunately, I was able to fix that, because if I went to the track with that, that definitely would have sucked. If I was running low on oil and going around a turn, I could have starved the engine. So I'm very thankful that, they took off all the under panels and went through everything and gave me, the list of things I need to fix before they'd sign off on it to go on track, because that was something that I hadn't even noticed myself. So yeah, just take it to a shop, make sure they go through it really well. If they tell you some things to fix, don't get frustrated with it. You should be giving yourself enough time to fix those things and then get it certified to go on track. The other thing that you're going to want is an alignment. And even with completely stock suspension, an alignment is really key, because you're going to be pushing your car really hard. If you don't get a good alignment, you'll wear through your tires really quick. You won't have really good stability, and just kind of overall, it won't be a really good track day. So take your car to get an alignment. Usually if you go to a good track prep shop, they probably do alignments as well, so you can get maybe a little package deal. For me, it was around $300 for my inspection and my alignment. And even on stock suspension, it was very helpful. What I recommend is just zeroing out your toe so all the wheels are pointed straight forward, and max out your camber in the rear. We don't have camber adjustment in the front, unfortunately, but that rear camber will help keep the car more stable around turns and actually get onto higher speeds. Then the last thing is kind of like your regular maintenance. Some things like oil change, spark plugs, filters, all of that you'll want to replace before your track day, especially if you're kind of like on the second half of your service interval. So if you replace it every 6 months and it's been more than 3 months since your last service, go ahead and do that service again. If you do it every year and it's more than 6 months away, you're good. But if you're getting there, maybe it's been more than 6 months since your last oil change or whatever, then it's a good idea to do your service. And the same thing for spark plugs. You know, if you replace it every 2 or 3 years and you've been on your spark plugs more than 1 or 2 years, go ahead and replace them. Especially in this case, you're going to be beating on your car, running it at a really high RPM for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours total for that weekend. That's not something that most of us can do on the street, especially in that short of a period of time. So you're going to put a lot of wear on your, components in your engine. So that's why you want to do your oil change to make sure your oil isn't breaking down. You want to do your spark plug so you're not going to be blowing them out and causing misfires and stuff like that. And do like your intake filter and stuff to make sure that your engine can breathe easily. So yeah, again, if you've just done it recently, not a huge deal. But if you're kind of getting close to the time of service, do it early, do it before your track day so you won't have any issues. And now the good stuff. So let's talk about parts. And there are really only 3 things that I would say you need to do in order to have a safe and successful track weekend. These 340i's come very capable from the factory, so there's not a whole lot you need to do, but most of it is to combat heat. And it's probably not what you expect. It's not an oil cooler, it's not an upgraded radiator. It's everything to do with your tires and your brakes. So the first thing is definitely tires. Again, I took my car completely stock to the track and it was on all season tires. They work fine, but there's a problem with them because they're a relatively soft compound. So that way, when things get cold, they're not super hard and difficult to drive on. It's an all season tire. So on the other hand, when things get really hot, they begin to get what we call greasy. They're slippery, they're going to slide a lot. And in a worst case scenario, if they get really hot, the compound can actually break down. Chunks of the tire will come off. So it's really not safe to drive on that soft of a tire. You at least want a summer tire, but I recommend a 200 tread wear track tire. The reason is because those tires are going to be a harder compound. And once they warm up, they'll last longer, they'll have more grip, and overall you'll just have a better time at the track because the car will be much more consistent. So yes, all season tires work, even, summer tires like Michelin Pilot Sports and stuff will work as well. But getting a 200 tread wear tire will give you the best reliability and consistency out of your car, especially as you get faster and faster throughout the weekend. Now, the tires that I went with were Bridgestone RE71Rs. They're a great tire for track days. They get up to temp really quickly. They're very sticky. And in stock sizing, I was able to get them for $1,000. So that's 225 front, 255 rear. I highly recommend going with a stickier tire. There are a lot of different options available for our stock wheel sizes. And, the range, it's maybe like $900 to $1,500 depending on what you go with. But the improvement is probably the most significant one you'll experience just because the extra grip you get from those stickier tires, you'll notice everywhere. So highly recommend it. The next thing I recommend are brake pads. And again, our cars are very capable. They all come with Brembo brakes up front, which is really nice. So pretty much any upgraded pad that fits an M3 will fit our cars as well. The Brembo calipers fit the same brake pads, so there are a lot of different options. Now in the rear, some of us aren't as fortunate. Some of us have single piston brakes and those have a few less options. But if you do have the rear Brembo 2-piston brakes, again, you can use any brake pad that works on an M3 or M4. Personally, I use Hawk DTC 60 pads. They are a track pad, so that means they make a lot of brake dust, they squeal. They're not great for street use, but on track, they are amazing. The problem that I faced when I brought my car stock to the track is I ran into brake fade. It was good for about 2 or 3 laps, but when I went down that front straight the third time, it was definitely spongy, softer than I was comfortable with. And I was already kind of anticipating it, so I was being careful. But if you're not careful and not expecting it, and you're flying around the track, like I said, getting faster and faster as you get more comfortable with your car, and you run into brake fade, that is a very, very scary feeling. So that's why I say, just go ahead and get some track pads, even if it's only up front. That does 90% of the braking. It takes 90% of the heat, and that will give you the reliability you're looking for with your braking system. For brake pads, I am using Hawk DTC 60s. They're a great pad on track, but they are extremely noisy. They squeal a lot. They make a lot of dust, so it's not really a great pad for the street. Because of the Brembos that we have in our cars, it's really easy to swap them in and out. So I swap them at the track, use them at the track, then swap my street pads to drive back home. The total cost of that was around $550, but the total cost really just depends on the brake pads that you go with. Especially if you have single piston rears, you're probably not going to spend as much money because you're not going to have as, performance oriented options available for your rear brakes. But they are available on FCP Euro, so that was kind of a win-win for me, even though I'm probably never going to wear through those brake pads. They're lasting forever. I think I'm probably going to sell the car before they're completely worn down. Now, the other benefit, of course, is it does improve your brakes. It actually almost made me eat my steering wheel the first time I hit my brakes because I didn't realize how much they were going to have a good bite on the rotors. So better braking, better grip from your tires, both help you get through the weekend better. I feel like those two are a win-win. Now, again, everything has a limit. The stock brakes will work fine if you can work within that limit. This is just something I recommend so you're not focusing on not overwhelming your brakes. When you're going to a track day, you want to focus on the car, getting consistent with your driving and stuff like that. And it's definitely safer to have an actual track pad on your car. Now, the last thing I recommend is brake fluid. And even though I did not have a brake fluid issue, this is something that you can do for peace of mind, and it's relatively cheap because OEM fluids typically aren't designed to handle the heat that you're going to experience on track. And my brakes get very hot. The calipers are starting to discolor. Even the backs of my brake pads are kind of like bubbling up a little bit. So they're definitely taking on a lot of heat. Working well, never experiencing brake fade, but that heat is there and it's going to travel through your brake fluid. So this is why you want to upgrade your brake fluid to one that can handle the heat, because brake fluid is hygroscopic, and as it absorbs water, it's going to basically have a risk of boiling, and that can cause brake failure as well. So I upgraded to ATE Type 200 brake fluid. Every time I mention this, somebody reminds me that it's not the best. I'm not saying it's the best. What I am saying is I've been using it for almost 8 or 9 years at this point, and it's never let me down on any of my cars on track. So I think it works really well. A nice little bonus, it's available on FCP Euro. So, for those of you guys that are able to use their discounts and warranty stuff, it's a nice option to have. Now, you might notice I didn't say you need coilovers, you need a tune, you need, all of these different things. And while all those things can definitely make your car faster, I don't think you need that for your first track day. I actually recommend you don't do that on your track day. I had a tune on my car, but I flashed it back to stock on my first track day just to get used to it at stock horsepower levels. And that'll give you a much better appreciation for the balance of the car and identifying opportunities to improve it. Now, once I got through that, I definitely started modifying things. And this is kind of the order I recommend doing things to get the best bang for your buck. The first thing I recommend are camber plates. The reason is because, like I said, our front camber is not adjustable on the stock suspension setup. So getting camber plates allows you to increase the front camber. This will help your tires last longer and also give you more grip as you're going through turns. So the car will turn in quicker and have more grip so you can take turns at a higher speed. A lot of people complain about understeer in our cars. And while I don't really feel like I felt that, this definitely helps alleviate that issue and helps bias things to rotate better. So I feel like this is probably the best bang for your buck. It's relatively cheap, usually around $300 to $500, depending on what you go with. It's not going to cause issues with X-Drive cars. It's not going to push out the wheels like longer control arms would. So you can use this with any F30 or F32, any F-Series BMW, and it'll give you the extra grip and driving performance you're looking for. The next thing I recommend are sway bars. And the reason is just like to complement your camber plates. This will make sure the car isn't swaying as much, and it will keep things as stable as possible so you can use the tire that you have available. Especially with stock suspension, you're going to be limited on how much camber you can run in the rear. So this makes sure that you're not really rolling over the sides of your tires, and you'll have as much grip as you can have when you're going through turns. It also gives the car a lot better stability, gives you a lot more driver confidence. So for me, that's a win-win. Now, the next thing that I did were lowering springs, and in general, I recommend lowering your car. Whether you do coilovers or springs, it's really up to you. Springs for me was the more cost-effective option, and the main reason was to get more camber. I maxed out my rear camber at around negative 1.4, 1.5, and with lowering springs, I was able to get it down to -2. So again, more stability, able to take turns at higher speeds. It's much better. And I was able to increase my front camber as well to complement that. So now I'm running -3 degrees up front, -2 degrees in the rear. I know camber kind of gets a bad name nowadays, especially because of stance kids and people that slam their cars beyond a reasonable amount. But in a performance aspect, it gives you a lot of benefits, especially on track. That's really where camber shines. So that's why I run a lot of camber. That's why I run more camber up front than in the rear. It's not a typical setup that you would see, but from a performance standpoint, it makes the car drive amazing. Now, of course, it does lower the center of gravity a little bit, and it does give you stiffer springs for a little more stability, but that's not the main reason I went with them. For me, the main thing was getting more camber out of the car. Now, the next thing you go with is an LSD, and I know a lot of people probably think this should be higher up. I do definitely admit that it is an improvement, but I think to really take advantage of an LSD, it takes a lot of driver confidence because you need to be comfortable using it to its advantage. The main benefit of an LSD is you're able to get on the throttle sooner when you're coming out of a turn. And I just have the M Performance LSD. It's the cheapest one. In my opinion, it's the best value. You know, it's plug and play. You just drop your stock diff and put in the M Performance diff. But you really need to get your confidence up to get on the throttle early. I'm talking about halfway through a turn and flooring it so you can get that slingshot effect. It works really well, but it requires a lot of confidence and guts to get to that point where you're comfortable doing that. Especially on your first track day, you're probably not going to be there. So that's why I put it a little bit farther down the list. I think the other mods are easier to take advantage of, even for, you know, new drivers. But as you get a little more advanced, an LSD will come into play and you can really push the car to its limits. The next thing I recommend is a tune, and obviously it's going to make the car faster because it makes the car faster. Every single straight that you go down, you'll have more acceleration, you'll have a higher top speed, but just keep in mind that if you do this right off the bat, you might not be able to take advantage of it as well. Usually that means you're going to be braking earlier, you're going to be a little more timid on the gas, and it just can kind of limit how hard you can push the car until you get really comfortable with it. So that's again why I put this a little lower on the list. There are a lot of other handling upgrades that you can do where even at stock power, it'll make the car extremely quick. But once you tune the car, when you're able to take advantage of it, that will definitely make it faster as well. And then the last thing on the list is wider wheels and tires. Again, this definitely helps. I know this is one of the first things a lot of people think they need to do, but in my opinion, it's not really something most people can take advantage of. If you have the stock wheels and you put stickier tires on it, adding an extra 20 millimeter of tire is not going to take several seconds off of your time. Once you've got the camber and everything dialed in to optimize how much you're using your stock tires, then you might be able to take advantage of more tire and a wider wheel, hopefully a lighter wheel as well. But that's just kind of the way that I did things in my perspective after doing wider wheels and tires and everything else. I feel like it probably gave me the least amount of gains. The main difference was going to a stickier tire, not just a wider tire. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, that's kind of the order that I would do things. I know it's probably not what you would think. Maybe some of you guys disagree, and I'd be very interested in arguing with you down in the comments, as you guys all know. But this is just my experience and kind of how I went about things and where I felt like I found a gap and was able to overcome it by making adjustments and making the car faster and faster. So we'll be doing more track days this year. Stick around if you guys are interested in more of that. Let me know if there are any other tracks you want me to go to or any other mods that you want me to try. I'd definitely be curious to hear what you guys are interested in seeing, and maybe I'll be able to try that out on my car before my next track day. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.